Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 1, Episode 4, How the Tess Was Won. Sam leaps into August 5th, 1956. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam finds himself as a veterinarian who has to compete as a cowboy to win the heart of a cowgirl Harris. The episode's original air date was April 14th, 1989. Now, before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you have not yet watched this episode, by all means go and check it out, and then come back and watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video, please hit me up with a like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. When I was younger, I was not particularly fond of this episode, and I was looking to see, upon rewatch, if my views had changed. And to be quite honest, not really. If anything, the episode has actually gotten worse over time. It's just a very slight episode with low stakes, and a performance from Scott Bakula that I am not overly fond of. Scott Bakula, of course, plays Sam Beckett in this series, the title character. I almost mentioned this when I did my Starcross video, but I didn't end up doing so. Now is as good a time to do so as any. Dean Stockwell as Al Calvigi was Al Calvigi from the beginning of the series. He had his character down right from the get-go. Scott Bakula, on the other hand, took a little while to get into his character. Not saying that he was bad at the beginning of the series, he just wasn't quite yet how he would perform his character when he really found his groove with the role. Scott Bakula, along with Patrick Stewart, were among my childhood heroes. I was quite fond, and still am, of the actor. He didn't find a lot of success post-Quantum Leap, though he did have appearances on Murphy Brown. In fact, that was a 13-episode stint, as well as movies like American Beauty with Kevin Spacey, which is a statement that has aged like fine milk, given all the allegations that came against Spacey. But he also appeared in a movie called Life as a House, a Kevin Kline feature, which also starred a very young Hayden Christensen, who would go on to star as Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels. He eventually ended up landing the iconic role of Captain Archer on Star Trek Enterprise, which purportedly told the story of the beginnings of the Federation. Enterprise was a pretty uneven series, only getting good in the last season, though some will say it also started getting good in the third season as well, during the Xindi arc. To be quite frank, he wasn't always that great in that series as well. He turned in some fine performances, but the series did not always play to his strengths. For instance, I found him very unconvincing as Angry Archer when he was in angry mode. I think Bakula is at his best when he's asked to play the nice guy using his easy charm. And of course, he has spent the last 7 years on the show NCIS New Orleans, a show which is coming to an end this year, which is one of the reasons why there has been so much chatter recently of a Quantum Leap revival. I am quite fond of Scott Bakula as an actor, but in this episode, he's just not very good. Sam leaps in and finds himself holding a squealing pig, and he has to wrestle a bunch of pigs in a pig pen on a ranch. While he's doing that, the story is unfolding with Tess, a rancher's daughter who runs the ranch, with her father. Her mother died at some unspecified date, and she was basically raised to run the ranch, which her father regrets. Tess is easily a character that could be very shrill and very unlikable. But as played by Carrie Leiser, she does not come off as such, and she is actually one of the highlights of the episode, in my opinion. I don't really take much issue with the titular character of this episode. Carrie Leiser actually has a pretty interesting career. She only has 26 appearances as an actress, the last of which is in 2011. In addition to that, she also has 16 writing credits, including on a current TV show called Call Your Mother, which she also serves as executive producer on the show. In addition to that, she also has 13 producer credits. The actor who plays her father in this episode is Lance Legault, who died on September 10th, 2012, at the age of 77. Now, for the longest time, I thought this character was played by Tom Skerritt, but I recently discovered that I was wrong. Among his 96 credits includes an appearance on Star Trek The Next Generation, MacGyver, Major Dad, and Columbo. He also appeared in a Bill Murray movie a long time ago, in the movie Stripes. Anyway, we meet these characters, and they are arguing. Chance wants Tess to marry someone, just any old fool, because working as a rancher is not natural. If her mother had been around, she would have turned her into a woman. But as it stands, Tess feels that she can outman any man on the ranch. And thus, a contest is born. If any man can beat her, that is, keep up with her, she will marry that man. And she picks Doc to be the one she goes against. And Doc, of course, is currently being inhabited by Sam Beckett. Chance ends up asking a skeptical Sam, what's wrong with the pig? And Sam, of course, has no idea. But Chance asks if it's hog cholera, which means that not only would the pigs need to be shot, but also set on fire. Well, gee, that sounds a little grim. But Sam doesn't let that happen. He says he has to figure out what is wrong with the pig first. And he starts to take off her home. How he even knows where to go is beyond me, but somehow he does. They ask him if he's up for the contest, and Sam says that no, he can keep the girl, and he takes off. Upon reaching home, he encounters a kid playing a guitar on his front steps. It's a bit of a running joke that he doesn't quite know what this kid's name is. Doc would know, and that is one of the running problems of quantum leaping around in time, figuring out who the heck people even are. He ends up accidentally calling him by the dog's name before heading inside. This kid is played by Scott Foltz, who apparently did not have much of a career. His last appearance of his 17 appearances was in 1992 on the show Evening Shade. Before going inside, he encounters Al, and his first appearance is occurring at the 7:39 mark of the episode. Al is obsessing over who Tina, his then girlfriend, might be sleeping with. He even accuses Sam of potentially being the one, which only serves to annoy Sam, and he eventually has to point out that he doesn't even remember Tina. Doc's house is filled with animals. We see an owl, along with a raccoon and a bunny rabbit. Sam ends up asking Al what he's there to do, and Al doesn't know, but he pulls out the hand link, which we barely saw in the last episode, and he projects that there's a 72% chance that Sam Beckett is there to cure the pig. Well, that would certainly be a thrilling episode. Meanwhile, Sam is relieved that he isn't there to marry Tess. And as it turns out, the numbers are in the 40s for that particular scenario. Sam eventually notes that a raccoon can see Al. And this is actually a running theme throughout the episode. Animals, crazy people, and little kids end up being able to see Al. Sam stumbles upon a diary written by Doc. He reads it and finds out that Doc is actually in love with Tess. And according to Al, this greatly increases the chance that he is actually there to marry Tess. Ziggy says that there's a 96% chance that someone who's been sending Tess love letters will marry her. And Sam tries to get out of it, saying, hey, well, this isn't love letters, this is a diary. And Al tells him not to fight it. The next morning, Sam Beckett drives up to the ranch, and Chance asks him if him being there means they have to shoot the pigs. Nope, not according to Sam. And Tess asks, does this mean you're taking me on? And Sam replies, yes, which results in some hootin' and howlerin' from the other ranch hands. Everyone seems happy about this turn of events, except for one man, who turns out to be Wayne, played by Marshall R. Teague, who basically seems to be a career guest star actor on television series. He has 119 credits, and he is still acting to this day. His first order of business is to mount a horse for some reason. We're not told why he's doing this exactly. But the horse he ends up mounting is called the Widowmaker. We hear in a voiceover that Sam's dad gave him advice on how to mount an unknown horse. And it seems very similar to his advice in the pilot about dogs. Look him straight in the eyes and show him who's boss. Sam does so, gets on, and then is taken on for the ride of his life. And within short order, he finds himself on the ground, because the only person who can ride the Widowmaker is Tess herself. This apparently was a prank set up by Wayne, and that might seem to be just having fun at Sam's expense, but as it turns out, there's a deeper motivation behind it. The next contest sees Sam roping some cattle, which Tess is doing expertly. Wayne, in his friendly manner, but suspect motivations, gives Sam some advice on how to go about it. But he neglects to tell Sam one thing, and that is to keep his thumb up, which is something that Tess calls him on when he asks what the two of them were talking about. Meanwhile, Sam is out there trying to rustle cattle, and he's not doing a very good job of it. Eventually, Chance gives him some advice to go after one. The mistake he was doing before was going after many. Just focus on one and get that one. He manages to catch one, but then suddenly, he's in a lot of pain. This draws everyone to him, and Sam pretends like his thumb has been taken off, but it turns out to be just a prank. And the fact that he played this prank would seem to suggest that somehow he knew Wayne was giving him bad advice. Much later in the day, it seems like Sam Beckett is ready to go home, but he is soon joined by Tess, who asks him where he's going. And apparently, they have business in town. Someone wants to buy one of their prized bulls, and she strongly suggests that if he wants to run Riata with her, that he come along. We cut to what looks like a dive bar. Sam, Chance, Tess, and Wayne are all there playing poker with the prospective buyer, who Tess is trying to sell the prize bowl on at a higher price than what he's trying to pay. Wayne seems to be abandoning the affable attitude that he had earlier towards Sam and insists angrily that he take a drink, because part of being a cowboy is being able to drink while holding the cards. Tess tells him to knock it off and that Doc better ante up because she is not going to marry anyone who can't beat her in poker. Al appears, lamenting that him and Tina met while playing cards in Vegas. Well, that would seem to contradict what we saw in the pilot, since the woman that we met in the very first scene of episode 1 is supposed to be the same person that is referenced throughout the series, even though eventually when we see her again, she's played by a completely different actress. So if we are to assume that that was not a retcon, then that was indeed some kind of weird role-playing. Apparently, Tina has left Al for Gushy, the little guy with bad breath, played by Dennis Wolfberg. Al eventually accuses Wayne of holding a full boat, which he gave to himself, causing Sam to accuse him. But when they reveal their cards, Wayne is not in fact holding the hand that Al told him he was. The accusation seemingly makes Wayne angry, and he's about to fight it out, but Tess stops him. Al is confused about how he can be wrong, and then soon enough we realize the reason why. Because Wayne did not give those cards to himself. He gave them to Tess. And Tess is talking to Wayne, saying she wants to win fair and square, not by cheating. But Sam thinks that this is how she intends to play it. We cut to Tess and Sam putting in fence posts, in which we engage in a somewhat sexist conversation. Actually, I wouldn't say somewhat. It is very sexist. Sam suggesting that there are things that a man can do better than a woman, such as making babies. This comment seems pretty out of character for the very liberal Sam Beckett. Eventually, Tess overheats, faints, and Sam takes her back to his house to play doctor. Like, actually play doctor, you sick person, you. What'd you think I meant? Anyway, Sam ends up undressing her to cool her down. But she wakes up in the middle of this and doesn't take too kindly to it. She makes the wrong assumption and ends up punching Sam in the face. She tries to cover with a blanket, which Sam sarcastically says is not a good idea. He removes the blanket so that she can begin the process of cooling down. Later on, we see Tess, dressed in Doc's clothes, asking about Piggy, the pig that Sam has named. She wants to know what's wrong with him. And Sam says that she simply has allergies. And those allergies almost cost the pig her life, along with her brothers and sisters. Let's take a moment to reflect upon that. And Piggy is afraid of the thunderstorm that is happening outside the window. Sam talks to the pig, trying to keep her calm. And Tess says, the pig can't understand you. But Sam isn't going for understanding. He's going for being soothing. There's a thunderbolt all of a sudden, which seems to startle Tess closer to Sam. Sam makes a comment about how the worst seems to be over. He turns on the radio, which is playing a song. And Sam suggests that he and Tess dance. Tess, looking vulnerable and uncertain, says that she doesn't dance. Sam quietly says, "Uh-huh," and they just keep dancing. But eventually she breaks apart, angry, saying that she will not lose in here what she won out there. And Sam remarks that he didn't think that dancing was part of the contest. And Tess says that everything is a part of the contest, and so far, he hasn't been able to keep up. The only thing that Sam has been able to keep up on was post-digging. And Sam also points out that he figures he's ahead on poker. Tess quietly says, at the comment, that she did not know that Wayne was going to do that. Tess eventually says that they are basically tied. But the object of the game was not to tie, but to win. And since the next day is Sunday, where nothing goes on, Sam lost. Sam tells her that she owes him a tiebreaker, and he offers a deal. Rather, she does. Ride the Widowmaker as your tiebreaker. But Sam is quite a bit hesitant, because the last time he tried to do so, it did not go well. The look on Sam's face is all Tess needs to think that she has won. And she leaves Doc's house, leaving a sighing Sam Beckett behind. And we cut to Tess crying in the car on the way home, though I'm not really clear on what she's crying about. The next morning, Chance is sitting on the porch, and Tess joins him. Apparently, they are about to go off to church. Chance ends up pointing out that Doc is about to try riding the Widowmaker. Al is there to help by keeping the horse calm. And at first, it seems to be working. But he ends up getting interrupted because Tina is calling. And just like that, Al goes through the door. We still don't have the door effect, and disappears from the scene. That's the end of the Widowmaker staying calm. And Sam goes for the ride of his life. Well, that's an uncharacteristic example of Al being an extremely bad friend. But despite all odds, Sam manages to stay on the horse. Sam gets off the horse, and Chance declares him a victory. But Sam is not interested, or so he claims. He says that he just wanted to see if he could ride the horse. I keep saying that, I don't know why. And not Tess, which, once again, is it's a very out of character comment from Sam Beckett. He ends up taking off, leaving a somewhat sad Tess behind. She claims not to be, but her father tells him to go after him. Back at his house, Sam reveals the reason he did this. He's apologizing to Doc, who can't hear him, and says that she has got to want him for him. In the middle of this monologue, Tess happens upon him. She's come to his house and asks, "Do you always talk to yourself like this?" And Sam is a little annoyed, asking, "Do you always enter a man's house without knocking?" She wants to know why he went to the trouble of riding the Widowmaker for Riata, only to turn it down. And Sam turns to her and asks, "You think that's what this is about? Riata?" And Tess fires back, "Well, this certainly isn't about love." And Sam replies, "You speaking for yourself or me?" And Tess seems surprised, saying in all the years that they have known each other, he has never once expressed interest. And Sam suggests that maybe he's just shy. But Tess doesn't quite believe that. He eventually shows her his diary, or rather Doc's diary. In response, Tess asks him if they can dance again. All seems to be going Sam's way, until they hear shouting outside, which turns out to be Wayne. As it turns out, Wayne is actually in love with Tess, and that is the reason for most of his actions in this episode. And as it turns out, the letters were written by Wayne. The ones that Al said had a 96% chance of being the one who would marry Tess is the one who wrote those letters. Right then, Sam realizes that he has lost the game. There's another scene in Doc's house where Tess asks Doc if he minds if she dances with Wayne. And this seems to be what clinches it. Later on, Sam is alone in his house when Al should appear. And Sam is understandably mad at Al. Al tries to claim that he knew that Sam could ride the Widowmaker. But he's more annoyed by the fact that Al said he was there to marry Tess, and that turned out not to be the case. Eventually, Al points him to a mirror and points out the fact, when Sam looks in it, that Sam had a lot to overcome because of his looks, I guess. I kind of find it hard to believe that this is the first time that Sam has looked into a mirror, but whatever. Sam and Al go out into the porch, where the kid is sitting, strumming along on his guitar. And Al says that Tess marrying might still be his ticket out. When she says "I do" to Wayne, he should be leaping. He calls for Piggy, and then the kid starts playing Piggy Sue on his guitar. Sam suggests a minor change as he recognizes the tune, and says it might sound better if you replace the name with Peggy, because as it turns out, the kid, his name is Buddy Holly, and Sam's actual mission was to inspire this song. And Sam leaps. Well, that was cute, but kind of makes the entire preceding hour of this episode completely pointless. As I said, this is not one of my favorite episodes. It does mark one of the few times that Sam had failed in his mission. Though, as it turns out, that wasn't his mission at all. I didn't like this episode very much, but there is good news. The next 3 episodes are absolute classics of the series. Starting with Double Identity, which I will probably have out 2 weeks from now, unless I feel extra motivated and get it out sooner. Next week will be a rewatch video of This Is Us, Jack Pearson's son, for my This Is Us fans. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys for today for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Korman Productions. You can join my Korman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Korman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Korman Productions, signing off.